I think the argument that we shouldn't try to predict terrorist attacks and that we can't predict terrorist attacks is interesting. And it actually is sort of refreshing because right after 9/11, that became the goal of everybody, is to predict when the next one's going to happen, who's going to do the next one. The nice thing about Mueller is he doesn't necessarily use quantitative techniques like I would, but he does look at some data out there in a rudimentary way, and he says, if you look at the number of Americans killed as a result of terrorism, it tends to be pretty small. It's fewer than people killed in traffic accidents, which is true. If we look at the data, that's absolutely true. So he says maybe this isn't as big a threat as people say it is, and maybe it's politicized and made to be a big threat. When I started looking at this, I tried to look at data as well, and larger data than just what the State Department was providing. I started looking at data from other countries of the world, and his analysis somewhat performs some risks and tries to get some probabilities of an attack. And I think he puts the probability of an attack as lower, or the probability that you get hurt as a result of terrorism as being lower than drowning in a bathtub. And I think that depends on your area. In some areas of the world, that probably isn't true. You probably have a higher likelihood of being hurt by terrorism. But something that is true, if we look across the globe and across time and space, is that it isn't a particularly high likelihood that you're harmed by terrorism. It tends to be pretty low, and that's not just for Americans. That tends to be for everybody. Crime is far more significant. Food shortages are far more significant. Traffic accidents certainly are. So there are significant threats. Where I think his analysis sort of falls a bit short, I would say, and I really respect his analysis, but where I think it falls short is it doesn't think about, even though terrorism itself doesn't do a whole lot in terms of the damage it causes, the reaction that it engenders is actually quite significant. It can cause wars between states. It can cause repression in different societies. It can cause civil liberties to be contained. That can have the effect of exacerbating the group that's already there and increasing their ranks and possibly pushing them to a point where they are more significant than they were when they initiated that first attack. So looking at this as a dynamic process, I think, is something that's really important if we're going to understand it.